Hello there guys and welcome back. Been a while since I made anything I know, but now I'm finally back. So what are we covering today? Well, if you read the title and thumbnail you already know, but hey, I might as well explain anyway. I'm responding to Anomaly Inc.'s defenses he has for Man of Steel, and why it's apparently great. So I'll only cover this part of the video because I have no interest in the rest of the DCEU, which can die for all I care. Well wait, it pretty much did. But Anomaly here thinks this movie is good and the best that this universe has to offer, which is wrong when that's James Gunn's squad. I can't say the middle word because E2's policies suck, but you get the idea. These defenses are pretty bad since they're all the same normie defenses I've seen for this movie repeatedly. So I figured, hey, I haven't made a few in a while, so this is the perfect time for me to go back. So with that out of the way, let's crash some alien spaceships into buildings straight into this.
So when it came to Man of Steel, I had no thoughts on Zack Snyder one way or the other. And on top of that, I'm not really a Superman fan myself, like, at all. Superman is a character I'm also very indifferent on. The reason I'm choosing to mention this is because I'd like to think based on that criteria, my perspective is very much parallel to that of the general and or casual audience when it comes to DC and its films, which is the demographic this video is largely going to focus on. So I could not have seen Man of Steel with a more neutral mindset if I tried. And you know what? I still think Man of Steel was pretty darn great.
Oh, we'll see my friend. We'll see.
Sure, Clark Kent isn't as upbeat as the Christopher Reeves portrayal, but that's because Nolan and Snyder were going for a far more realistic and gritty portrayal of the character. This character would have had to grow up in Kansas struggling to keep his powers a secret, constantly feeling isolated from the world around him, knowing full well that he is an alien, the first alien that they are going to encounter at some point, and there's a lot of complications that certainly come along with that.
Oh god, this argument. How is it unrealistic to be optimistic and upbeat? Especially when you grew up with loving parents, have friends and relationships, got by financially, and was taught good moral values.
Yeah, Superman can bring this team together better than I ever could. His strength
doesn't matter how strong you are or what abilities you might
is
have.
more human than I am. He lived in this world. Fell in love, got a job. Despite all that power, the world needs Superman. And the team needs Clark.
Simply being dark doesn't all of a sudden make everything more realistic. And what would having to keep his powers a secret force him to be isolated? Especially since early on in his life, when he was just a kid, he learned to manage his powers, meaning he should be able to blend in with society with little to no problem. That would only be if his parents forced him to be isolated and not let him use his powers even during times when it's warranted. Oh wait, that's what they do in this movie, and not in any other continuity or story that I'm currently aware of. So basically these versions of the Kents are just crappy parents. Great, and before you say anything about the consequences of Clark using his powers, we're getting there, don't worry.
Digest a lot of these lines from Man of Steel in very bad faith, like this exchange between Clark and Pa Kent.
Well, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Of course, Pa Kent didn't want Clark to let the children die on the bus.
What are you, nuts?
He was simply factoring in that whatever Clark does is going to impact thousands, if not millions of lives.
When the world finds out what you can do, it's going to change everything. Our notions of what it means to be human, everything. All these changes that you're going through, one day you're going to think of them as a blessing. And when that day comes, you're going to have to make a choice. Stand proud in front of the human race or not.
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son.
Pa Kent is just considering what would be the lesser of evils. Morally, of course Clark should have saved the children. Pa Kent knows that. But are the consequences going to be much, much greater if he's discovered for the anomaly that he is?
Right? Wrong.
I'm sorry, but there are no consequences relating to a situation that warrant sacrificing dozens of children just to keep this secret. No sane person with any sense of decency should even advocate, even for 1 second, that they should have died. And he says maybe, not an outright no. Saying maybe is implying that he should have just left him to die. It would make sense to lecture him if, let's say, he uses his powers irresponsibly to a point where he causes the accident. I can understand that. But the accident was entirely beyond Clark's control, and he did the right thing given the circumstances, like how in the Christopher Reeve movie, where Clark uses his powers irresponsibly just to play a prank on some fellow kids, risking his identity being exposed. No, that's not what happened. If John just said, "I don't know," that would be way better, since the implication would be that he would know that Clark couldn't have done anything else without risking his identity being exposed. Plus, there are no consequences for Clark's actions here, at least no negative ones. This never leads to the government investigating or taking Clark. And even years later, he still uses his powers all the time before he's even Superman, risking him being discovered, but there are no consequences for those either. And this act here was just hand-waved away as being an act of God by Pete Ross's mom, so she's not suspicious of Clark being an alien among us. Plus, by saving the kids, Pete stops bullying Clark and even becomes his friend, so the movie only shows us the positive consequences, but simply tells us of potential negative consequences. Thus, this whole dilemma falls flat on its face.
Now, this is a very real dilemma this character and his family would likely have to face. People say that Clark Kent wouldn't let his father die in the tornado, and yet maybe the Christopher Reeves version wouldn't. But Clark's line of thinking in Man of Steel was set up well within the confines of this movie before the tornado incident where he lost his father, and Clark's actions are internally consistent because his father was telling him his whole life, "You gotta wait, bro. You gotta fucking wait. We don't know what's gonna happen when you reveal yourself." And yeah, it's not like Clark elected to let his father die to keep the secret. His father insisted on it so that he would not reveal himself, even though in that moment Pa Kent knew it would cost him his own life.
I'm telling you guys, it's wrong. It's wrong! It's wrong!
Oh yeah, the moment where he died just to save a dog? Wow, what a powerful moment. Besides that, Clark still could have saved him. There was so much time that passes where Clark could have just run to him normally and saved him, and he wouldn't even have to use the super speed to relocate him. Also, even if they couldn't make it back to the overpass in time, Clark should be strong enough to keep both him and his dad on the ground. Much like what happened with the bus incident, people will likely just chalk that up to be a miracle or an act of God. This is why the original version of him dying is so much better, because he dies from a heart attack that Clark could not control, and it serves as a humbling moment for him.
All those things I can do. All those powers. And I couldn't even save him.
But here, it was easily in his control to save him, and he could have done it in a way that wouldn't expose him. But hey, I guess themes don't need to be conveyed through natural cause effect or any logic, huh? That would just be ridiculous.
And you wonder why Clark Kent is so dark and broody by the time he meets Lois Lane? Like, yeah, he didn't watch his father die and then go hit a bucket of balls the next day. It fucked him up. It was always meant that Clark would eventually find his groove as Superman and become a symbol of optimism and hope that he was always meant to be.
He didn't have to let him die, as I said a minute ago, so I'm not reiterating that again. How's he supposed to eventually become a symbol of hope and optimism when he's this moody, downtrodden edgelord all the time? He's like this in the current days of the movie, even though his dad's death was like 15 years earlier. And even in BVS, he's still like this another year and a half later, where he still doesn't have faith in people. How am I supposed to accept that he'll eventually become the Superman we all know when he doesn't change? I addressed this in my BVS video, so if you want more elaboration, just watch that part towards the end where I talk about his death. But simply being hopeful and optimistic isn't unrealistic. Even characters like Captain America can still be adapted to modern times and still work.
Man of Steel simply portrays a more realistic path filled with trial and error and consequences for the character to get there. Also, another thing people criticize about Man of Steel is that the final battle causes too much collateral damage and Superman doesn't really save anyone. To which I say, what the fuck are you talking about? Aside from those who tragically died in the battle, he saved literally everyone on planet Earth after going toe-to-toe with another Kryptonian. A Kryptonian is someone who is just as strong and fast as he is, so no doubt the battle was going to level a city, and collateral damage was unavoidable. Also, just for the record, much of the damage done to Metropolis was done by the Terraformer machine that Zod brought with him from space anyway, which remember, Superman destroyed before it could do any more damage. So...
He saved us.
And not to mention, Clark has never fought someone like Zod before, and had to use his full strength in a fight. So of course, shit was gonna get messy. But the destruction of Metropolis and the backlash it received was actually so vocal, it led to being one of the plot instigators for the sequel. And
what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
The issue isn't that he doesn't literally save everyone, the problem is that he literally doesn't even try to prevent more destruction. You seem to forget or even omit the Smallville battle, where he literally takes the fight to the city and pushes or punches the bad guys to places that are populated. He could have just had it in the cornfields, but no, he's just angry, and that completely justifies him being a complete dumbass. When it comes to Metropolis, instead of going after a generator in the ocean, where there are little to no people, he should have just instead gone to the world engine in the city first to destroy it, then go after the generator, or just have the government nuke the one in the Indian Ocean, while they use Superman and the military to use the slip space generators to destroy the one in the city with the black hole, which is stupid in and of itself, but I think we should all know why. And if you don't, I think you're a lost cause if you think causing a black hole is a good solution. Or better yet, just have Superman crash through it and bust it up until it's destroyed. Problem solved. And during his final fight, he could have just tried to lead Zod away from the city, but he doesn't even try that either. If Zod kept pushing back against any attempts to leave the city, fair enough, kind of like the typical Doomsday battle, but Clark just allows so much destruction to happen when it's unnecessary. Thus, he's a bad hero.
But one more thing, the climax to the battle is what seems to anger most people, at least from what I've seen. That Superman kills Zod when Zod gives him the ultimatum to do so when he tries to laser a family right in front of him.
If you love these people so much, you can mourn for them.
And so Superman realizes that Zod wasn't going to stop. He couldn't be reasoned with, and so right there and then he snaps Zod's neck. Which is pretty violent for what I'd imagined is considered the norm for the Superman character. And while it might not have been the typical way to go for the character, killing off one of his arch villains, but again, the character hadn't fully matured as Superman, and once again, Zod left him no choice.
I'm going to make them suffer, Cal. These humans you've adopted, I will take them all from you one by one. One way this ends, Cal. Either you die or I do.
Superman snapping Zod's neck to save an innocent family doesn't make him a sociopath, as some of these weirdos like to propagate. If anything, the film goes out of its way to show just how much Superman didn't want to cross that line, when it shows him having a breakdown after he does it. Like, the film makes it absolutely clear that Clark is the one you're meant to feel sympathy for in this conflict. And this action he commits, crossing this line, is all part of the long, hard, and at times tragic journey for his character to become the Superman that fans know. He's not flawless, he makes mistakes, he does things he regrets, but he never turns his back on the good person that he is.
So he mourns killing Zod, a guy he flat out says is a monster, but not killing the fetuses that he denied any chance of life. That seems pretty inconsistent to me. I got comments from people trying to defend this by saying maybe he didn't know they were inside the ship, which is wrong. He was shown them before by Jor-El, and there is no Fortress of Solitude. There is only the ship. So Clark knows full and well what he's doing. I got one schizo claiming that there was nothing inside, but from what I can tell, this movie doesn't confirm that. When Zod activates the ship, they light up, but that doesn't mean they don't have anything inside them, and Superman is the type of character that would take issue with them being destroyed, considering how much he values life. My god, Star fans have the dumbest defenses. Well, I guess that makes sense considering you're fans of these brain-dead movies, so thus they're brain-dead themselves.
One very pitiful excuse I've seen thrown around that people love to use is, but Superman did have a choice. He could have flown up and taken Zod into space and saved the family, right? A very simple retort for that brain-dead argument is, yeah, genius. He could have done that. But then what? Zod was going to keep killing people no matter what Superman did. He made that point crystal fucking clear.
Never.
He signed his own death warrant and Superman put him down to save humanity. Even though that was the last thing he wanted to do. It's not hard to grasp.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
Considering the chokehold Superman had Zod in, he easily could have knocked him out and just waiting until the government could have just made a sale to hold Zod. I know some might say there wasn't enough time or that they couldn't hold him, but let me explain. I got this from a friend of mine, massive DC fan Meme Repository, who made some pretty good points. Given that the military had readings on the atmospheric composition of the Kryptonian atmosphere, and access to a crashed ship, I think they could have whipped up something. If Supes had just knocked him out, and considering that Superman could easily just watch over Zod and keep knocking him out whenever there are signs of him coming to, that is completely possible. Such as a sail filled with Kryptonian atmospheric gases that will render him powerless. This is totally something Superman would do since he has qualms about killing, even against his enemies. Plus, the military would have ample reason to want him captured. He's a walking goldmine of intel about alien technology and threats from the wider universe. Zod may actually be the single most valuable political prisoner on the planet. Not to mention that I'm pretty sure that the shady types like Amanda Waller would love to test any anti-Kryptonian weaponry on him, just in case Superman decides he isn't for the Angels. So, I think that concludes this response. So this tangent was pretty bad, and shows that Anomaly doesn't understand Superman. Considering other stuff I've seen him say about Superman, I'm not surprised. As well as the fact that he can't explain the movie in a way that makes sense, and makes himself look like a fool for claiming it's great, with really bad points. Well, with that out of the way, I think we're done here. As I said earlier, I don't care about the rest of this video since I don't have a stake in anything else he says, because I just cannot care less about anything involving the DCU, unless it was made by James Gunn, because he's actually pretty good at making comic book movies, unlike everybody else who worked on this franchise. Well, that's all for now. This is Skids, signing off.